This week's show brought to you by Hillary Clinton's email. Yes, if you were mad about it, you were wrong. Welcome back to another Boxscore Geek show. Yes, Bryant, politics. I brought it up, although that'll probably be the last of it, although it is. We're recording this show right after a bunch. FBI director just got fired. Lots of crazy stuff going on. Hopefully in a year when I listen back to the show, if I do again, Brian, we'll sit and laugh, although who knows, we might be living in a dystopian Mad Max future, and I'll wonder how I can even access podcasts when, we're all in the Stone Age. So anyway, this is the box.
For the record, I love the FBI and Trump and everybody. The government has my full support. Full support.
Dude, you're the white guy in the show. You don't have to worry about what you say. But anyway, this is the Boxscore Geek show. We are a basketball and sports podcast. So we're going to be talking NBA playoffs and possibly Moana, a kids movie that I just got a chance to see because I'm a new father and I'm like 6 months in the past. So you get to enjoy that. All right, so we're going to talk the NBA playoffs. Patrick and I both wrote an article within the last week, so we get to talk this stuff. And then also talk some other funny stuff around the NBA, Lonzo Ball's shoe deal, some stuff I've said about Kobe, and the like. All right, let's go over the playoffs really, really quick, Brian. The good news is there are two series that aren't going to take too long to go over and nothing to be too surprised about. So the Golden State Warriors versus the Utah Jazz. Utah Jazz without George Hill got routed by the Golden State Warriors. They had one or two games where they kind of looked like they made a run, and then there's just no shot. Candidly, the Warriors with Kevin Durant were a much better team than the Jazz already, and then the Jazz without George Hill are just a pretty weak team. Although what I'll say if you're a Jazz fan is, I've said this before, I'm going to keep saying it, as long as you've got Gordon Hayward and Rudy Gobert as your core, you've got a pretty strong team that you just have to build around. Now you're going to lose George Hill, and your other guards are crap, so just get a decent point guard, and you're fine. As for the Golden State Warriors, I mean, how can you not just be excited if you are a Warriors fan? I mean, Curry, Draymond Green, Kevin Durant, all looking hot in the playoffs. I think I didn't even watch the full game, Brian, but I think at one point when I checked in, I think Curry and Clay had combined for 9 or 10 shots and were at like 23 points. So
yeah, that happened in the first half. Yeah.
I mean, really, the only real issue for the Warriors going forward is there are a few older pieces. Andre Iguodala's getting a little older. Who knows what's going to happen with his contract? Obviously, you don't have a pure center. I saw some people who have been talking like, it's better to go small without having Andrew Bogut. That's just wrong. So there are a few things that the Warriors have to worry about going forward, but the general thesis we're going to have around teams here is that if you've got that 1 star, that 2 star, that 3 star, that 4 star, you really that's a much better place to be in than the alternative where people think you want to have assets and build from the ground up. So the Warriors are in a great spot. Hopefully they get that title. I'm still not worried about Cleveland. We're going to talk about them in a second. But yeah, so that's that series. Houston, San Antonio Spurs. This one is interesting as how close it's been. In particularly because Kawhi has just been absurdly good. This is such a good playoff performance out of him. I haven't had time to crunch the numbers myself, but all the conventional stats say he's great. And then when you look at like efficiency and such, he's great. And then if you consider what everybody says about his defense, he's great. Really what's odd about the Spurs for kind of one of the first times in their history is that their supporting cast is kind of weak. LaMarcus Aldridge has not looked good this playoffs. I don't know why. Pau Gasol and David Lee have kind of looked a little dinged up. I mean, that's one of the risks when you go for older complementary players. I don't necessarily hate that they picked up Pau Gasol, but, they gave Pau Gasol a decent contract and let Boban go. Going older as opposed to younger is an interesting choice. Tony Parker was playing all right, but, losing him certainly hurts. So it's an interesting one. The Spurs, as I've kind of mentioned, have traditionally underperformed in the playoffs. When you look at their regular season record, their regular season strength, how strong their stars are, they have done worse in the playoffs than other teams. To be fair, they've been a little dinged up. And to be honest, the Houston Rockets have gotten some love from unexpected places. if you are a San Antonio Spurs fan, I know EJ Fisher was upset that there was this stretch of time where there were a bunch of moves being done that seemed to just help out other teams in the same division as the Spurs. Lou Williams got traded to the Rockets. Nerlens Noel got traded to the Mavericks. Lou Williams has been looking great as a trade move for Houston. I've been pretty critical of Daryl Morey in the last season and a half in terms of some of those front office moves. Lou Williams doesn't make up for, Eric Gordon and Ryan Anderson, but geez, that move is really playing off in the playoffs, which it actually makes me excited, Brian, because a lot of times midseason trades, even if they help the team out, an example would be Jason Kidd to the Mavericks back in the day, it doesn't immediately help them out in the playoffs because there's usually not enough time to bump their seed. And then because of that, they're usually facing a stronger seed. So even though they're stronger, they're still weaker than the top seed. That Lou Williams trade is looking great. I'd like to examine this season a little more in depth to see what the hell's going on, but it's staying close, and I don't know the current score, but the last time my incredibly slow browser on my Surface Pro, which I still need to replace as my podcasting machine, Brian, seriously, just so slow. They're up 72-63, so the Spurs better get on it if they want to, win this series out. I do think in this offseason there's some good news, which is there are a lot of good point guards that may be available on the market. Ricky Rubio may be up for trade. George Hill is going to be back on the market. So Tony Parker getting injured long term, that might be a good thing because he's only got 1 year left on his deal. It might be wise to buy him out to, you can, I think, stretch his contract. So, it's like a $3 million a year hit for the next 5 years instead of just $15 million for one or whatever, and pick up a good young point guard, get George Hill on this team. It's rough. We've had 2 seasons of it. The LaMarcus Aldridge experiment, we've had 1 good season and 1 season. So we'll see where the Spurs go from here. I don't see them competing with the Warriors. And I am excited to see. I actually really, really wanted the Warriors Houston Rockets series from the get-go. I was thinking the Rockets might have a worse seed, and if that was the case, they would have been playing the Warriors sooner. But God, who doesn't want to just see how many threes can happen in a game? I want to see a James Harden Steph Curry duel, and I think just the honest reality of Golden State versus Houston is, in both Golden State versus Houston and Golden State versus the Spurs, it's kind of just like an ammo match where the Spurs have them outmatched. The Spurs can bring Warriors have the Spurs and the Rockets outmatched. The Spurs can bring Kawhi. The Warriors counter with, I'm going to say Draymond Green, actually. That's going to sound a little mean, but he's amazing. And then they still have Durant and Curry. The Rockets can bring up Harden. The Warriors counter with Curry, and then they still have Durant and Draymond. So I'm excited to see whoever the Golden State Warriors face. I do, at this point, hope it's Houston. I mentioned I was in a playoff pool. I had Toronto going all the way to the finals, so I am clearly out of it. I am dead. So because of that, I don't mind if my Spurs pick dies too, and we get to see the match we all want to see. The let them fight, the monsters get released. The Beard versus, does Curry have a good nickname? I know he's got a couple, but none of them.
Chef from those ESPN commercials? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's looking good for the Rockets right now. They're up by not quite 10, but it's only the third quarter, so they could come back in this game. But if they end up winning this and are up 3-2 with the opportunity to win Game 6 at home, then they're going to be big favorites over the Spurs. It would be exciting to see the Houston versus Golden State matchup in terms of scoring. As a fan, I'm probably more scared of the Spurs.
Really?
Yeah,
Still?
well, the Rockets haven't done very well against the Warriors the last couple of years. I know they're a little bit different now, but they only have one way to beat them, really, which is by scoring. The Spurs can beat them with defense or rebounding as well. So, is it possible for them to just outshoot the Warriors by a lot in a 7-game series and win? Absolutely, but I'd be more worried about, somehow McGee ends up getting stuck on the bench, even though he's been playing great, and they just get killed by a bigger Spurs lineup. So when Houston seems more willing to go small against the Warriors, there's just no way anyone can beat the Warriors going small. So
yeah, it's just so we're clear, because we keep reiterating this. Every time I see small ball as a meme, what you really, really have to consider is what that means. And the reason the Warriors can get away with growing small is because they have Kevin Durant and Draymond Green, who are, what that means. Unicorn is not quite the right term because, they're not that, well, actually they are that rare. I'll say unicorn. They have these, really super unique players that have a unique skill set. And, the Bulls were the same way with Dennis Rodman. And, he played.
And LeBron on the Heat, right? That was what kind of started recently.
Yeah, well, like LeBron on the Heat, that's the thing, one of my favorite, it's a horrible movie, actually, which makes me sad because everything about it should have been good. I think it's called Glory Road, which is about the first all African-American starting five team that won the NCAA title. But, they're listing off player credentials, and they list like the starting center on this team. And I think he was like 6'7" or something. LeBron James, sure, he's a small forward, but you're not playing small if you put LeBron James even as your center, right? LeBron James in the 60s could have been competing against Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain as a center. No problem. You're not playing small when you put LeBron James as a center. You're not playing small when you put Draymond Green as a center. You are playing a player that is a little shorter but has all the skills to play small. And so when other teams try and go small and you go, well, they're playing Draymond at the center, so we've got to play a shorter center. It's like, no, all you have done is played a worse player against a player that's better at the position. You're better off having a center out of position, but still doing what centers need to do, as opposed to having a smaller player out of position. And not only are they out of position and are going to have a harder time doing what they need to do, they're mismatched and they're not going to get you the benefits that, centers normally do. So I think to your point, no one's going to beat the Spurs or the Warriors going small. And the issue
they've
right
got
now,
a 96 D rating for the playoffs right now, which is the best by far. Like, that's what's really been the difference from the playoffs is, Rudy Gobert played pretty well. Like, the Jazz played pretty well. Portland didn't do that bad. They made some shots, but they've still been looked bad in the numbers, I guess is the way to put it. Like, no matter what they tried, they just got crushed in the end. So Rudy Gobert got in there for sure. Like, he had some points. He even had some great playmaking in the post, but yeah, the defense is just too good for the Warriors right now.
Yeah. So to your point, I think you're kind of right that the Spurs are the bigger threat, but their bigs are not looking good right now. So it's kind of interesting.
Popovich has been yelling at David Lee, and we talked about Aldridge before. The one thing is Dedmon is kind of the wild card, but yeah, we'll see.
All right, so let's see. Let's do Toronto-Cleveland. Really, the reality for the Cleveland Cavaliers, and this even came up in a few interviews with Tyronn Lue, LeBron James in his minutes. Playoff LeBron James is back. Let's just be clear that LeBron James has been one of the best playoff players in the history of the NBA. And I by that, I also mean just like how much of his team's success he has been. In 2007, his first finals that he ever made, that team had no business making the NBA finals. And oh boy, did the Spurs, show it once he got there. But the Cleveland Cavaliers strategy has been give LeBron James 42 plus minutes a game. And oh boy, is that paid off. The rest of the lineup, they're playing 34 minutes or less. So it really just, Cleveland is LeBron James right now. Now, again, exact same point I made about Houston and San Antonio. I really think that Golden State is going to have Cleveland outmatched. And, this year they look more dinged up. Cleveland, it has LeBron James and Tristan Thompson playing really well. Kevin Love's been all over the place. Kyrie Irving is a high volatility player. The rest of that team really sucks. So I really think that this year, we saw it last year, but last year was a fluke. You just have to accept it was a fluke, right? That being down 3-1, you're not supposed to win. And Andrew Bogut getting injured, Draymond Green getting suspended. Steph Curry had been injured from both slipping on some sweat, and then he injured his ankle and his knee, and his shot was not looking the same. And it kind of reminded me the year before, actually, when they won a title. Klay Thompson got concussed and wasn't, in both of the previous two finals, Klay Thompson and Kevin Love got a potential concussion right by the finals, and they were just not shooting as well. So the only point I'm making is last year's finals was clearly a fluke for Cleveland, and arguably by the numbers, Golden State is much better this year, and Cleveland is worse than they were last year. So we'll see what happens. But, to the point of Cleveland just playing LeBron James, playoff LeBron James minutes, and playoff LeBron James is showing up. This has been an interesting point that Arturo, you can follow him as American Numbers on Twitter, has brought up. If you look at Toronto's playoff rotation and you look at OKC's playoff rotation, I know OKC was last round, they played this series. Toronto played like a regular season rotation. Kyle Lowry played like 37 minutes in the regular season. Kyle Lowry played 37 minutes in this playoff rotation. In fact, Jonas Valanciunas only got, I think, 24 minutes a game in the regular season. Even
and he got benched for a while too. He wasn't the starter even.
Exact same point. Like, you can't play small against LeBron James. I know it's tempting to think we'll play small so we can keep up. You're not going to keep up with LeBron James. You should at least get a center out there who can rebound and get easy putbacks. So, really, Toronto was outmatched from a star power. One of the big questions is always, is Kyle Lowry going to show up? And he is kind of inconsistent in this playoff series.
He's probably hurt though too still, right?
Yeah, that's always rough to count on. And then, the coaching strategy was just much different. Cleveland basically said, we're going to give our minutes to our best players. Toronto said, we're going to rest our good players. We're going to play some small lineups, and got outcoached essentially. And, I'll put it to the next series, whatever happens next. Out East, the only star that is left is LeBron James. And it's not to say that John Wall and Isiah Thomas don't kind of count, but this was the point when I wrote the article about how Boston is the worst team to ever get the number 1 seed in a conference. Their best player is Isiah Thomas. And I'm not saying Isiah Thomas is a bad player. I'm not saying Isiah Thomas isn't a star player. In fact, there's a very funny point that Dave Barry brought up, which is Isiah Thomas is arguably Isiah Thomas 2, the one on the Celtics currently, is better than the Isiah Thomas on the Pistons. That's not really quite true. The reality of Isiah Thomas that played for the Pistons is he was really, really good seasons 2 through 4 of his career. And then it looks like he got injured and was just never the same after it. So he didn't have the normal prime. He stuck around. He actually very similar to Sam Bowie, however you say it. He stuck around long after he was past his goodness, but he just never was the same as he was early in his career. So Isiah Thomas is the first one on the Pistons. His peak is significantly better than IT2's, but IT2 is already having a better career if we look at like his Bricado prime in terms of how many seasons he's put up. But that being said, John Wall, Isiah Thomas are just not at the same star level as LeBron James. So it's still going to be tough for either one of those teams to beat Cleveland if LeBron James stays as good as he is. Although, as I noted on last week's show, or 2 weeks ago.
Okay, you're back, Jay. We got you.
LeBron James. What was the last thing I said before I kind of fizzled out?
No, we got it all. Just a slight lag there.
Just hopefully, if I sounded robot-y, all I'm saying is the best player in the East right now is LeBron James. It's not even close. Usually you got to be really scared about that in the playoffs if the rest of your team isn't great. So Cleveland's looking good. I wouldn't hate it if LeBron James goes to 7 consecutive finals. That's just ridiculous. And I will say I've seen people going, if he wins, do you have to put him in the same discussion as Jordan? Sorry, dude, he is past Jordan. It is also just worth noting. This is what people miss about Michael Jordan versus LeBron James. By this point in their respective careers, age-wise, LeBron James has outperformed Michael Jordan in terms of finals won, finals been to, MVPs won, and Michael Jordan got a lot of extra help by Dennis Rodman being gifted to them, the NBA shortening the three-point line, and they essentially, in 1998, gave Michael Jordan a Lifetime Achievement Award MVP. So, when you're talking Michael Jordan versus LeBron James has already had, this is going to be rough, a better career than Michael Jordan through the end of his, if we exclude the Wizards years, because those are bad years. Through his second retirement, LeBron James has already had a better career than Michael Jordan. And really, if the only thing left to kind of count is rings, and you just have to note that Michael Jordan's support staff for his second three-peat is so much better than any support staff LeBron James has had, except arguably his second year on the Heat. So there you go.
And like you're saying about the Jordan retirements, from this point on for Jordan, age 33 and up, not a lot on that resume, right? LeBron seems like he's going to keep going for a while. Like, he's not going to go off and play baseball.
Michael Jordan did really well on his resume when he was older, but, it was essentially like they changed the rules in a way that helped him. Michael Jordan was not a three-point shooter except for 1996 and 1997. That was when they shortened it. the NBA is not going to make any rule changes to help out LeBron James. If anything, the NBA keeps making rule changes during the CBAs to make it harder to form the kind of super team that Michael Jordan had to get.
That's a good tease for our upcoming segment.
All right, Boston, Washington. It's 2-2. Not really surprising, to be honest. These teams are very similar strength-wise. If you look at them in terms of star power, John Wall versus IT2. I don't have much more to say about it other than Boston really blew it in that last game, giving up. I don't remember the lead they gave up as a big one. The only other note I've had is if Boston had any shot at Jimmy Butler and they didn't go for it, they messed up. Arguably, they messed up not getting DeMarcus Cousins. And, the fact that Nerlens Noel was also apparently on the board for nothing. Boston, if Boston doesn't make the finals this year, and they were just kind of one piece away, it's going to be a little sad, and Boston's fans have every right to be upset.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's talk this article that Patrick released. And so here's a roughness. Tyler Cohen, is that how you say it?
Yeah, I'm not sure. It could be Cowan or Cohen.
Cohen. Apologies to not know it. I was listening. There's a great Cracked podcast this week on millennials, and I was listening to it. And one point they made is like the millennial generation, which I guess I barely fall under. It's 82 on, so I just barely hit it. The millennial generation is like the most read generation, but then we have pronunciation problems because we read more than we talk. There are a lot of words that I've never pronounced out loud, and that I don't always look up the pronunciation definition. And one thing I'm happy about, Basketball Reference has pronunciation guides for players, but I don't know if there's a popular pronunciation guide for economists. But the sad part about Tyler Cowen, I'll just say Tyler for the rest of us, is he's kind of making some assertions about what's going to happen to the NBA cable subscription service as essentially things like YouTube get more popular. And, what I would, Patrick kind of comes back and kind of says the idea that people are interested in star players versus being interested in watching a winning team is just kind of off. And it's worth noting, like in the NBA, if you are a winning team in a big market, you get an audience. So there's a lot to go over here, but, it just always kind of amuses me about Tyler, because I think he talked about Kevin Love once too, is just the number of people that just kind of accept conventional wisdom without looking at the data, even in respected fields like being an economist, and just kind of assert things. And, one thing I'll note about like ESPN or other subscription services is these subscription services have problems in that they're bundled with large packages I don't want. That was the old model, right? You would have to get this cable subscription package if you wanted HBO. You'd have to get this if you wanted ESPN. And a lot of people, myself included, have kind of gone, I don't really care. I'll just cancel it and get, Netflix or Amazon Prime. And, I'm at the point now where if I want to buy or rent something, it's really easy to just do it kind of like that, as opposed to having a big cable package. And then there's some other points about it where, I think we've bashed NBA League Pass a ton in being just a horrible product. So it's kind of interesting where when you're worried about fans and their behavior, what you really have to look at, this reminds me a lot of the music industry, is the CD market got destroyed a lot when, Napster came around. But I would argue a large part of the death of CDs and the swiftness of it was, or the death of the music industry, was their lack of ability to adapt to a new technology. Because iTunes was very profitable and worked out amazingly well for Apple, but arguably it entered the market 5-10 years too late. I don't know what you would consider it. So kind of the same thing here, where we're watching the NBA, and one of the things that just happened is they signed this big lucrative cable package deal that bumped up the player salaries, which we'll talk about in a second. And that's the old market. That's the old model. You've got these old businesses that are going, we're going to have, NBA. And if you want to watch NBA, you have to subscribe to us. If you want to subscribe to us, you have to subscribe to this cable package. And people are just going, nah. And, the reality of that is the NBA has a product people want, but if they don't have a good way to get it to them, that's going to be their sticking point. And I don't I certainly believe that, and Patrick brought this up on last week's show, and I don't know if he put it in this article, but I certainly believe that people will stop watching ESPN for talking head segments because things like podcasts, including this one, things like YouTube clip shows, have replaced SportsCenter, right? If I want to watch a top 10 list of plays, whatever, I can find that on YouTube, and in some cases better produced than stuff on ESPN. That's getting replaced. I don't think you're going to replace people watching an NBA game with people watching clips and highlights. But if there isn't a good way for me to watch the NBA easily, you could lose out at this point. So that's an interesting one. And, it makes me sad because I bash baseball around here a lot. It makes me sad, but Major League Baseball has a significantly better mobile streaming product. It's $25 a month for MLB League Pass. You can watch like up to 4 games on your computer. There's blackout restrictions, kind of, that you can easily proxy around it, but whatever. Blackouts are stupid. I wish sports would get rid of blackouts. It's freaking stupid to think that because I live 2 hours away from Milwaukee, that I shouldn't be able to watch my home team if the game doesn't sell out. That is ridiculous. That is, just let me watch the game. That'll make me a fan. But MLB's League Pass is significantly better than NBA's. And it's amusing to know this, but just to kind of say, people like watching winning teams, and really it just has to go for the NBA has to fix their streaming service or how their distribution. That's all I got there. And then it just makes me sad that a lot of people that don't know about sports economics, even if they know economics, just make stuff up based on kind of anecdotal evidence. It's sad. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Patrick here. If the Spurs were just magically became the Knicks and had been for the past 20 years, they'd be up there with the Patriots as, an all-time beloved franchise and winning franchise. And yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that you said there.
And then one other note that is interesting about that point, it wasn't in the article Patrick wrote, but Arturo released a tweet. I think it was just in a back and forth conversation with
This is like
Sam.
The next step for this conversation, right?
Sam, and I apologize. You tweet at me all the time. You comment in the comment section.
Sam Esfandiari. Let's bring him up right now. Yeah.
You said it wrong. It's on Bryant. I'm not even going to risk it. So, Arturo noted that yes, there was a gigantic boon to the NBA salary cap, but it is unlikely to keep going up because of what we are just saying. Basically, Cable was kind of hoping that the NBA was going to save a lot of shedding, but people are still shedding in large part because there's lots of other stuff you can do. So it's unlikely that we're going to see another cap boost unless something else happens. And the NBA, we've talked about this a ton before, is really stupid with how they limit player salaries. They have a max salary for each player. So LeBron James, Kevin Durant's making like $26 million a year. That's close to his ceiling. I think basically if you've got seniority and whatever and have been on a team, I think you can get around $30 million a year for 5 seasons of the NBA right now.
The super max is what they call it.
But that's the max. And so the issue becomes, if you look at people not like Lonzo Ball that actually have star cachet in the NBA, you can get huge promotion deals. And, we mentioned this about Kevin Durant going to the Warriors. Kevin Durant has to know, listen, I'm an MVP player. I'm a max contract player. Doesn't matter at this point. I'm going to get max no matter what I do. At this point, if he wants to increase his brand and be like LeBron James after he retires and have a lifetime shoe deal or whatever, going to, basically the Valley, going to California, going to a winning team, getting a title or two, if Kevin Durant gets a finals MVP and a good market, that is going to be worth so much more. He might be leaving $5 to $10 million a year on the table in salary because he gave up his bird rights, because he signed a shorter deal than what he could have gotten elsewhere. But the simple reality is what that means to his marketability is just so much more. And we've said this a ton about the max salary in the NBA. Dave Barry's noted this, where if it's only a couple million, which I know sounds weird to phrase it that way, but let's also note, because it can only be a couple million, things like taxes can come into effect. So, for instance, going to Miami or Texas, which have fantastic teams if you want to win a title now, becomes a much more lucrative proposition, because it basically can make you go, oh dear God, I'm losing $5 million leaving my team in OKC. I just make that up in salary cap going to, back in the day, maybe the Mavericks, the Rockets, the Heat.
Those states have really low sales or income taxes.
I think they both have zero, if I recall. But
That's pretty low.
yeah, that was it was a shame. I kind of got in contact with him, but it like fizzled. Like I called him once and then I didn't get back. There was a Sloan talk about a tax attorney that basically brought that up and was talking about like it's really complicated. This is what really sucks. If you're a professional athlete and you travel, like you get taxed based on where you go, and this is what like makes it really, really hard for boxers, right? A boxer could live in Wisconsin, but because they fight in Nevada and California and New Jersey, they get taxed based on the rates of the different states. So athletes, I feel for them on their taxes, but was talking about you could analyze which teams you'd want to go to based on their travel schedule and the state they're in, all that stuff. But yeah, so the NBA has always been kind of silly with salary caps to try and keep parity or whatever. Arturo's noting that because we may see, I think gate revenue used to be the old method for what determined what you got paid. And then obviously television came in. That's, the wages of wins talks about, basically how ticket revenue is like the biggest revenue driver for NBA teams. I wouldn't be surprised if television, wouldn't be surprised. And I'm almost guaranteed that television has far surpassed that sense because, wages of wins was written in 2006. So, but now that television revenue is going to be, peaked, you got gate revenue is basically peaked because the stadium can't get any bigger without getting a new one. Television revenue is peaked because, it's as Arturo mentioned, this is probably the last TV deal we're going to see. Now marketing becomes the big thing for stars to dictate where they want to go. And so that's going to be the real interesting part about, if the NBA doesn't get on the ball and fix their distribution issue, they're going to see a lot more players leaving teams to form super teams just because they realize, hey, I'm worth $30 million a year if I stay with my team, and I might have to give up $6-7 million a year to go to another team, but I can make that up in marketing. Obviously, it's only going to apply to a couple players, but guess what? Those players are what have dictated who wins finals pretty much the entire history of the modern NBA. So there you go.
Yeah, and just to add to that, one thing is he talked, and this is Arturo again. We've got his tweets up on screen for the audio listeners. He talks about the intent of this rule, and let me just read real fast. The new CBA that just went into effect has the intent of restricting player movement, but it has a critical flaw. It relies on the NBA being the principal source of income for the players. It isn't true for superstars now and will be less true in the future. So this is why he thinks it's not going to work, basically. So, yeah, it's really interesting. Like, Silver is doing the exact opposite of what he's trying to do.
Well, the bigger annoyance to me, and I've talked to Dave Barry about this back and forth, we're both huge fans of behavioral economics. The annoying part about so many of these rules is it makes the assumption that your actor, this is a classical economics problem, making the assumption that your actors are rational, which they're not. And, that's the problem, right? You think to yourself, nobody in their right mind would ever leave $5 million on the table and leave a good team. Kevin Durant leaving OKC honestly didn't make a ton of sense because arguably, I was shocked after they traded for Oladipo, though, boy, that didn't work out. And they gave Oladipo the money they should have given Kevin Durant, that's hilarious. But what I was going to say is, Kevin Durant leaving OKC didn't make a lot of sense because he left money on the table. He left, he did arguably go to the only team that had a better shot of a finals than OKC, in my opinion. So with that in mind, when you made that rule, you're thinking there's no way this person would ever leave this money on the table. But guess what? People can move to different states because they like the climate better. It might not have anything to do about money. And that has always been the biggest issue with so many of these rules. They go, assume a purely rational actor that only cares about money. And that has never been the case. People are not rational actors. People are worried about other things. As I mentioned, people in the NBA, people don't evaluate the value of a draft pick correctly, even though the rules have basically disincentivized tanking. People still tank. So all of these rules that go, our intention is to prevent people from doing this. Well, that only works if your assumption is rational actors that are only concerned about money, and that is not the case. And then Arturo brings up, well, even if that's your principal assumption, you're also assuming that, like he said, if your assumptions are flawed too, it's a double whammy because now you've got people that go, I'd rather play with my friends, and I can maybe make I can make up the money market. So there you go.
Yeah, it's a powerful argument. I agree with him.
All right, let's talk Lonzo Ball and his shoes. So this is amazing. So Lonzo Ball and his dad LeVar, right, went around to all of the major shoe companies and said, "We don't want to sign with you as Lonzo just being endorsed by you and having his line with you or just being endorsed. He wants to make his own shoe, and all of you produce it and sell it." And all of them passed, of course, because most of the shoe companies go, "We want our own signature shoe." As a result, Lonzo and LeVar made his own shoe and released them for the price of $4.95. Now, by the way, Shaquille O'Neal came out and made a tweet where he was just like, unlike other shoe companies that they're not price gouging people with their shoes. Okay, that's fucking bullshit. Wow, I got me cursing. Obviously, like Air Jordans or LeBron's signature shoe, or even Steph Curry's dad shoes, are all ridiculously overpriced, right? Arguably, you could get the same type of shoe for like $30 if you go to Costco or whatever, and there's no branding or whatever. And then when you look at the cost, right, it's some sweatshop in China is making it for nothing. BS that they're not price gouging you for the shoe. That said, holy cow, a $4.95 price point, and I guess some initial articles said he'd sold like less than 300 shoes, which is 200 more shoes than I expected him to sell. Now,
don't forget about the $200 sandals they're also selling.
Are you? All right. Now, the reality is, and I'm going to agree with this point, LeVar Ball's interest in his son's career and business advice and all this is off the walls. This is a horrible manager or person to be connected to. The rough part. If I was Lonzo Ball at this point, I'd tell my dad, take a hike. Now, there's a fantastic documentary to watch. It's broke on ESPN 30 for 30 if you haven't seen it. Now, here's what drives me nuts. If you are mad at LeVar Ball, you're entirely within your right mind to be, because I'm noticing people saying that he is costing Lonzo Ball money correctly, right? If Lonzo Ball goes to the Lakers, signs with Nike, let me say it wrong. Yeah, the millennial thing I was just talking about. I always read it. I read it forever, and I'd always say Nike instead of Nike. Okay, but let's say he signs with Nike. That's a potentially huge shoe deal, and he is losing millions already, right? Even just giving up a year. But if you're mad at LeVar Ball costing his son money, you should be even more mad at the NCAA that does this to everybody, right? Lonzo Ball could not have his own shoe line when he was playing. Wasn't he UCLA?
Yeah.
One of your guys. All right.
Same fight song as us. Close enough.
All right. Wait, you're UC Berkeley, right? Am I crazy?
Yeah, you got it.
I don't know. Too many schools, same name. I've made this mistake before. But anyway, so... the NCAA, you can't make money on shoe deals, and the rules actually prohibit the interaction with players talking to people that could give them better career advice, which often ends up with the exact situation we're seeing, namely players that only get advice from family members. And sometimes let's see, what was the book? I can't remember. It was called like Indentured. Oh, it's an interesting name. But it was a book on NCAA athletes, and they noted that
is this Taylor Branch are you talking about?
Could be. Okay. If you find, but they were talking about how the NCAA was investigating this player because he essentially had a relative who was an NBA player. I'm forgetting all sorts of names, but they investigated and said, we think that this person is coercing you into going to the school, possibly giving you preferential treatment. And it's like, if you can't even talk to a relative that's a close, I think it was like a godfather, about advice, that's what happens. These athletes, that go broke. That was the whole premise of the thing broke. Well, they start a step behind because, when I was going to college, I could talk to as many advisors as I wanted. I could go talk to a professional, right? I could go, if I had a friend that worked at Microsoft when I was going to school to study computer science, I could ask all sorts of questions. Which classes should I take? What should I do? The NCAA essentially gets in the way of students talking to people like agents without the risk of them being considered professional and risking their careers. So if you're mad at the LeVar Ball situation, which you should be, basically, the NCAA causes this kind of bullshit. And not only does it cause this kind of bullshit, it is doing the exact same thing. It is costing players that have value, right? This was, I remember Chris Webber, Fab 5, ESPN 30 for 30 talks about this too. He's in school. He's going to Michigan, whichever Michigan university.
It was Michigan, yeah.
I'm saying there's like University of Michigan, Michigan University. I was laughing. There's a Michigan.
It is the Wolverines that the Fab 5 played for.
One of my relatives went to Michigan Tech, and I joked that Michigan Tech should call itself MIT. Anyway, yeah, but it's
cool.
But anyway, what I was going to say is he was lamenting that, you go to the school bookstore and they're selling black socks because they were wearing black socks, and selling long baggy shorts and selling jerseys with their names for, $50, 100, whatever it was back then. It's probably like $200 now, and going, I'm not seeing a dime. So essentially what's fascinating about the Lonzo Ball, LeVar Ball legacy, what's going on right now is I'm going, everybody that's upset with this and mad at LeVar Ball is right, but LeVar Ball is essentially the personification of the NCAA. And if you have someone who's yelling about LeVar Ball and you go up to them and say, yeah, isn't your school, name any one of the North Carolina schools, Duke, UNC, isn't there one more, Wake Forest, right? Is Wake Forest?
I think they're in North Carolina. I don't know.
Yeah, go up to them.
I'm ignorant, Trey. Very ignorant.
Say, shouldn't UNC? Yeah, UNC is as bad as LeVar Ball, right? They'll look at you and say you're nuts. So that's my kind of part. LeVar Ball is the personification of the NCAA. If you're mad at LeVar Ball, you should be infuriated at the NCAA. It's a silly system. That being said, this is an amazing situation to watch, and I'll be curious to see what happens. And let's hope Lonzo Ball does get some advice and cut the cord with his data, though. That's the secondary problem that NBA players run into. You can still get bad advice, encouragement from your teammates because you're all kids. So is what it is.
Yeah, and that failed original negotiation with Nike and all the others also included his two other sons, Lonzo's younger brothers. He was trying to negotiate like a lifetime deal for all three of his sons. So there's a lot of balls out there, and this is going to keep going for a while.
It to me, it almost felt like the inversion of the Steph, the Steph Curry story. Which, by the way, we didn't give like a shout out, or at least on last week's show I didn't give a shout out because I think you guys talked to ESPN a little more. But like shout out to Ethan Sherwood Strauss, who was let go.
Yeah.
But they even noted that I don't know if it was Ethan that did this, but like one of the most popular articles was on the Steph Curry drama that happened where, essentially the whole shoe deal that ended up with him with Under Armour, like not Lamar. Sorry, I was going to say Lamar Odom. LeVar Ball, Lonzo Ball situation is like an inversion of that. You read it, you're like, what the hell is going on? All right. Just got to get this out there because I might not make a post about it. I had a head cold this week, and my son was up all night sick over the weekend. So those two things impacted two articles I was hoping to release. Yes, that's an excuse, but let's get going. I had some Kobe heat rekindled. There's an old article I wrote, Bryant, called like 20 players better than Kobe Bryant. And the basic take that I did on this is I said I'd made some claim on Twitter that Kobe Bryant wasn't a top 20 all-timer, and people said, are you kidding? And I went through and I looked up, and I looked through NBA history. Obviously, it's easy to find 20 players with careers produced better than Kobe. But what I even did is I went conventional wisdom, right? I looked for things like MVPs, NBA Finals, Defensive Player of the Year, et cetera, and easily found 20 players better than Kobe. And this week, my brilliant claim was Kobe Bryant was never, ever a top 5 player in the NBA throughout his entire career. And in both of these, what my basic point is it is really, really hard to be a top 5 NBA player. There's only 5 spots, and some players are just great. Like, right, as we noted, LeBron James might take his team to 7 consecutive NBA Finals. I wouldn't even necessarily say LeBron James has been a top 5 player, but obviously, like I think easily top 10 player like the last 7 years. I don't even know if he's been top 5, but it's like, would you have taken from 2005 on? Would you have taken Kobe Bryant over LeBron James? Absolutely not. You've locked one of your top 5 spots. Not LeBron James. Kobe Bryant had a career next to Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan. Essentially, like their career spans overlapped. That's 2 other spots. Obviously Shaquille O'Neal they started on the Lakers together, right? Shaquille O'Neal on the Lakers versus Kobe Bryant. Shaquille O'Neal for the first half of the 2000s. Would you have taken Kobe Bryant over Shaquille O'Neal? No. I mean, like, I've named 3 names for the first half of the 2000s, and then you've got like Kevin Durant and LeBron James for the second half of the 2000s. It's like it's already easy to kick Kobe Bryant out of the top 5. So I just noted that. And just the last point, I did one more follow up on this. A lot of Kobe Bryant's love is just reputation. So here's an interesting note. Kobe Bryant, something people always bring up is his defense. So one year, for instance, 2004. Brian, could you do me a favor because my computer might be slow? Could you look up the defensive rating of the Los Angeles Lakers in 2003?
Yeah.
But so like 2003 might be Kobe Bryant's best hope of being a top 5 player. But guess what? Kevin Garnett, Tim Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki, Steve Nash, and Shaquille O'Neal are all active and playing MVP level that season. And what I noted was interesting to me, I looked at the Mavericks. Mavericks are a number 9 defensive team in the NBA. Obviously that's always what happens. I noted Steve Nash over Kobe Bryant. Some names I noted were like Steve Nash and Jason Kidd, right? Steve Nash and Jason Kidd, pretty much, I would always have taken them over Kobe. And I left Chris Paul. This sucks, but I left Chris Paul. I've left him on the table many, many times in these arguments, just because he does not get the respect he deserves, in large part because he's been in a very difficult conference and just doesn't quite get the accolades he deserves. It was an absolute travesty that he lost the MVP award race in 2008 to Kobe Bryant. But even leaving him on the table, but people bring up, when you say Steve Nash versus Kobe, what they will say to you is his defense, his defense, his defense. Well, guess what? In 2003, Kobe Bryant's arguable best argument season for being a top 5 player, I would rank Steve Nash above him. Steve Nash is on the Mavericks that are ranked 9th in the NBA in defense. Kobe Bryant's on the Lakers in 2003, ranked 19th in the NBA in defense. So there you go. I don't know if I might release some articles on my Kobe hate, Brian. It is one of my loves around here, but it always amuses me the revisionist history people have to do to justify Kobe. And as I mentioned, my 2 points are he was never a top 5 NBA player because it's really hard to be a top 5 NBA player. He's not a top 20 NBA player because there have been a lot of great players. He's arguably not even a top 3 Laker because there.
Oh, we got Dre froze. Let's see if he's coming back. All right, he'll probably be back soon. But just an update here for those that are listening on the audio. The Lakers did have a D rating of 104.7 that year in 2003. So, yeah, not quite as good without Shaq anymore. So, yeah. Okay. Oh, you're almost back, Dre. I can barely hear you. We got no video, though. Let's see. Try talking some more.
No. Let's see. I'll turn off my video. So,
all right,
am I back?
We got you back. We got you back.
Okay, yeah, and that you said the defensive rating of 104.7, that was ranked 19th in the NBA.
Exactly, yep.
We're going to say Steve Nash versus Kobe 2003.
You're breaking up a little bit more, Dre, so I'll step in and say one thing. I was looking at this, too, when you were talking to me about it, and I was trying to give Kobe the benefit of the doubt, look at his best seasons. 02-03 and 03-04 were 2 of his best seasons, and even then, he's not even a top 10 player, no matter how you want to look at it. If you look at total wins produced, so you want to say it's like an Ironman minutes kind of thing, he wasn't top 10 there, and he wasn't top 10 per minute either.
Well, and to be fair, just so we're clear, one thing that I do tend to do there is I'll usually kick out names like Ben Wallace, and
you're being really nice, Dre. You're being really nice.
But I'm saying, I'll kick those out because what I'm saying is I basically will handicap the argument and say, okay, I know that I'm going to say like Dikembe Mutombo and you're going to laugh at me. So fine, I'll kick him out. But you're still left with players like Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Dirk Nowitzki, Nash, and Shaq. All 5 of those have as many, if not more, MVPs than Kobe. So there you go. All right, that's all I got on my Kobe hate. I don't really have a lot of time to talk about it because I want to get out of here. I did a bunch of hard work right before this, and I want to get a Five Guys burger before they close. But as I mentioned, I'm like 6 months behind because I'm a new dad. As I mentioned, I'm also a new dad, which means I'm infected with the new dad virus, which means you talk about being a new dad a lot. But I finally got a chance to see Moana, and here is my hot take. I liked it better than Frozen, and thinking about it, I think it was a better movie than Frozen. I think narratively and character-wise, it was a stronger story. I think Frozen, Let It Go is a much better song. But even in the context of the movie, I don't think Let It Go fits as well as a lot of the songs in Moana. That soundtrack is hot. It was written by I know half of his name, so if you can help me out, the guy that wrote Hamilton. I
don't know his name.
Oh dear God, we suck. So sorry, I haven't seen Hamilton yet either. So, but the soundtrack was essentially written by the guy that wrote Hamilton. So the songs are really good and they make sense. So that's the point. Is I think Frozen's soundtrack is a really strong soundtrack. You could argue that Let It Go is a better superstar song than anything in Moana, but I would argue every single song in Moana fits better even than Let It Go does in the context of the Frozen movie.
I have not seen Moana or Frozen, unfortunately. I'm older than you, and I don't have kids, so yeah, that's the situation I'm in. However, here's one thing I want to ask you about Moana, Dre. Remember when it came out, there were some rumblings of racial problems with it, appropriation, something weird racially. Did you see any of that, or was it cool? Were you cool with that?
It's a rough. I mean, it is a really rough one because they essentially what they went for is they just went for like Pan American culture, which
Hmm.
is many cultures, and that's hard to do. But I think it's not an issue I can speak specifically to. Obviously, I'm a minority, but not all brown people are the same. Obviously, that's the same problem this movie ran into. I think they did. It's annoying to grade racial stuff on the curve. Other movies, they did a much better job in terms of background research, in terms of actually casting people of color, or actually even the cultures, right? The lead actress, I forget her. I'm just horrible with names today, but I mean, she was a 15-year-old when she did it. A
Hmm.
freaking dynamo, and obviously, The Rock is Samoan, so they actually cast like Pan American or Pan Asian, people from like New Zealand, Samoa, etc., in these roles. They actually did do some respect to the culture. Obviously there is some appropriation, which gets that's a whole other bag of worms. But I'll just say, compared to a lot of other movies, I thought it was better. That's my 2 cents. I can certainly understand both sides of the coin, but I liked it.
I've heard good things about it, so I'm glad you like it too. I'll hope to see it someday.
All right. Well, that has been our show. I'll give a shout out to Mick Foley. I got my Mick Foley Funko Pop, which if my let's see, we'll see, Brian. I'll tempt fate.
Hey, it
Okay.
worked.
Well, we'll see. I got my Mick Foley Funko Pop. Finally got it. It's been too long since this came out. His daughter did a video show of it like a month ago, so I've been waiting for over a month for it, but I finally got it. So that's my big shout out, and obviously Moana, great movie. So those are my two shout outs. Brian, you got any?
No, not really. I did see Guardians of the Galaxy. That was pretty good. It was as good as the first. It was pretty funny. So if you like Marvel Cinematic Universe and you haven't seen Guardians of the Galaxy, you will like it.
I liked them. I liked the first Guardians of the Galaxy. So 6 months from me, Dre, when I can Redbox it, Netflix it, Amazon, whatever it is, looking forward to it. All right, that's been our show. If you found us not through the website, you can find us at boxscoregeeks.com. You can also find the podcast version on iTunes and Stitcher. The Boxscore Geeks show. Subscribe, upvote, etc. That helps us out. We go live every week. We've done it a few weeks now, Brian. Tuesdays, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, twitch.tv/nerd numbers. And if you missed the live show, you can catch us on channel Nerd Numbers on YouTube. I think that's everything I got. We'll see you next week, hopefully to talk how the Warriors are doing against some team in the NBA conference finals.